Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. I'm joined today by Jared Morningstar. How you doing today?
Doing great. Yeah. Happy to be here on this lovely Monday.
Yeah, this is fun. So you are you're a lot of things, and you're working for the Center for Process Studies. You're doing some work for Lynn Marie at the Psychedelic Medicine Association. Are you currently in grad school or doing any kind of graduate level work? No?
Nope, never done that. Never been there. Maybe on the horizon, but it's working out for me to just do the academic stuff in a sort of solo renegade way and no debt. So there you go.
That is something that I think a lot of people should consider. And people will catch on to how clever Jared is and how insightful Jared is over the course of this one. So, Jared, so excited to have you here because I've been following you kind of on socials. I think the first time I maybe met you in person, and this is the first time I remember it, was at the CIIS kind of process conference that Matt Siegel and a number of others put on over there. What was the name of that one? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was with Ian McGilchrist back in March 2023. So it's called Metaphysics and the Matter with Things, which is the title of his recent two-tome massive philosophy metaphysics book. So.
Yeah, that was a good one. And I went in having only read a few bits of McGilchrist, but it was kind of like it felt like it was going to be a McGilchrist meets process event, which it kind of was with a little bit of metamodernism in there. Um, but yeah, okay, before we dig in, I want to kind of give you an opportunity to like, how did you come to this kind of interesting intersection of psychedelics and philosophy?
Yeah, so my academic background that I do have is mostly in religious studies. That's what I did a bachelor's degree in. And I did a lot of comparative religions, Buddhist studies, Islamic studies. But that was kind of my window into philosophy, existential questions. And it was at the same time that I was really getting personally and intellectually interested in psychedelics. So the sort of thesis project I pursued for that degree was all looking at DMT-induced mystical experiences, trying to do some comparative work with more traditional mystical experiences and what the sort of phenomenology, the qualitative characteristics of these mystical states could maybe say on a deeper metaphysical level. So that was my first foray really into the psychedelics and philosophy niche, and certainly it's grown since then, and it's been a fun place to explore.
So you had some Platonism before you were out of school then.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely through some of the Islamic philosophers and a little bit, some of the Christian mystics as well. And nowadays, certainly, the process philosophy with its own kind of unique, inverted in some ways, Platonism. So.
And did you have any kind of early exposure to Islam as kind of a philosophical religious system before school?
No, not at all. Not at all. So it was through that initial degree that I did there that really got me into that tradition and its philosophy and spirituality. My advising professor was the Islamic studies professor at my small liberal arts college, so took a lot of courses with him. He was very much on the kind of mystical philosophical side of Islamic studies, so got exposed to a lot of richness of the tradition in that respect.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think um, my first kind of exposure to Islamic thought as a serious system philosophy and a history in its own right was like a medieval philosophy course, which was like, oh, this is actually amazing, and that's perhaps when I actually fell in love really with philosophy, was that kind of coursework where I'm like, oh, this is just like an amazing, like, how does one think kind of program,
Yeah.
and how does everything fit together kind of like Legos or some sort of system.
Mhm.
And that's when I was like, beyond Plato, like Plato is nice, but I didn't get it like I got this. Did you have
Mhm.
some kind of moment or like thing where you really loved Islamic thought in that way?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I was really lucky in that I got introduced to, kind of the breadth and richness of a variety of the kind of world spiritual traditions, kind of in tandem. So I certainly fell in love with the Islamic tradition, but likewise with Hindu philosophy and Buddhist spiritualities, and being able to look into those kind of side by side was really rich. But especially with the Islamic stuff, there's at the same time that there's this deep intellectual character that traces some of its philosophical origins back to these same Greek thinkers, Plato, who you've mentioned, that will be familiar to Western audiences. But it has, this very spiritual, existential side, and mixes like deep emotion and poeticism into the philosophical traditions in a way that really resonated, I'd say, with some of my own disposition and values. I was surprised. I mean, these are the kinds of materials that's really hard to get introduced to in the West, where we have so much Islamophobic and just reductionistic kind of representation and so much media. So it's like, whoa, there's this deeply beautiful world philosophical tradition here. And so it's always a joy to be able to share that with others as well.
Yeah. So psychedelics coming in as kind of a serious thought, beyond kind of your coursework. Like, were you, when you were in school, was this kind of medical psychedelic thing coming to mind for you?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it started taking off at that point a bit. This was like 2014 to 2018 that I was doing my degree, so it was still a little early, and not nearly as mainstream as it became thereafter. But I was personally a little less engaged in some of the purely medical side of things, and a little more in this philosophy, spirituality side. But it was fun to be able to kind of play with those things in tandem a bit, and start to have these early inclinations of, these deep spiritual experiences themselves might have some kind of health and wellness producing kind of effect, and being able to think some of the neuroscience, cognitive science right alongside the mysticism. Fun to tie those discourses together for sure.
And I'm going to do something that's a little selfish. When did you first encounter John Cobb?
This was in 2019, listening to your podcast while I was at the gym, and I'm like, this is some really unique stuff I haven't been exposed to previously. I'd heard of process philosophy and Alfred North Whitehead, the kind of progenitor of this lineage, but there's this major living thinker who's talking to these psychedelic guys. And lo and behold, a number of years later, now I work for the Center for Process Studies, the research organization John Cobb founded over 50 years ago. So, thank you.
Thank you for saying it. And I love that it worked out that way. In my undergrad, we never really got exposed to Whitehead. Thankfully, my breathwork teachers got me a good amount of exposure. Lenny and Elizabeth Gibson. And so I was hanging out at, this is relevant, I promise. I was hanging out with some folks at Harvard Divinity School recently who got some exposure to Dream Shadow. And they're like, what does Whitehead have to do with Groff and like inner work? And you being kind of steeped in kind of Whitehead a bit, can you speak to like what is relevant there about like Whitehead to this whole psychedelic experience or breathwork
Right.
experience?
So there's this term process philosophy that is associated with Whitehead and people influenced by him. But you could just as easily call this a philosophy of experience and a metaphysics of experience. So basically, how this 20th century thinker kind of reconceptualized reality on a different basis wasn't that, there's these small building blocks of some kind of fundamental material that you put them together in complex ways and you get stuff like life. And well, where does the subjective experience come in then? We don't know. He flipped things in a pretty profound way and said, actually, the building blocks of the reality we inhabit are experience itself. So something like an atom is actually, through Whitehead's philosophy, understood as a series of occasions of experience that have these physical aspects, but mental aspects as well. So some of your listeners may have heard of this term panpsychism or pan-experientialism. Basically, the idea that some kind of qualitative experience, firsthand sense experience is a pervasive feature in reality. Simple at very simple levels, like the atomic level. It's not a sort of reflective consciousness like we have, but nonetheless, it's not some mysterious thing that emerges at who knows what point. And so Whitehead's whole philosophy is kind of, figuring out how to think about reality on the basis of experience and process and event rather than concrete beings that build and maybe then they change. So starts with change, starts with experience. And so that has some very significant implications in terms of thinking about altered states and especially psychedelic experiences. If you're coming from this frame, being able to think about the ways perception changes might be more have more of an impact than just thinking, oh, it's this kind of neurochemical thing that's happening, and alterations are happening, hallucinations are happening, and it's like, okay, maybe that's definitely true. There's all sorts of neurochemical complexity going on, but maybe that is in concert with tuning into different kinds of real complexity that exist beyond our minds, and not just a dilution or an alteration of perception, but an attuning to other features of experience and the world, which may be very real and poignant in their own right.
Yeah, if you've not been exposed to this before, listen to that a few more times, everybody. It's very helpful. Yeah, and like, I'm not gonna try, but okay. So from there, I'm really kind of interested in mystical thought generally, but I was listening to a podcast you had earlier, and I forget the name of it. It's something wholeness.
Hunger for Wholeness from the
Hunger
Center for
Wholeness.
Christogenesis.
Wow, it's quite the name. And I think there's an interesting thought there where there were internal conversations inside the Sufi community and maybe the mystical Islamic community where there's kind of like critique about being too inward facing and like world shunning. Um, and like the idea being that we're here to kind of participate in this world as opposed to just try to escape it. And this has been as far as I can tell, this is an ongoing theme throughout a lot of religious practice and thought, right? This is not new with Islam, but
No.
can you kind of speak to that kind of like this mystical impulse and like a little bit about Islamo-mysticism, and then, this, how do we get engaged and what's the thinking there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those who aren't familiar, the Islamic mystical tradition is often equated with Sufism, these spiritual orders and traditions within the kind of broader Sunni Muslim milieu. It's a little broader than that, actually, but it's kind of a 101 Sufism, Islamic mysticism. That's kind of what the basic kind of equivalence is. You've maybe heard of the Sufi author Rumi, the poet. Most of the Western translations out there are unfortunately more forgeries and creative rethinking of his thought than actual faithful renditions of it in English. So you have these deep mystical traditions within the Islamic world that often focus on sort of meditative practices, prayer, seclusion, different kinds of ascetic and ecstatic practices. You've maybe seen the image of the whirling dervishes, these Sufi dancers, which actually trace their kind of lineage back to Maulana Rumi, the poet. So it's a wide variety of practices and different lineages, but one of the important things that's often overlooked about Sufism, particularly as it's been westernized and popularized for a more kind of new age spiritual audience in the West, is it kind of takes away some of the Islamic material and content and tries to express some of these things in a more universal language, which has some benefits and can introduce some poignant ideas to people that might be a little harder to access otherwise. But what really gets lost is, some of this kind of engaged element, where especially the Sufi practitioners, they weren't a separate sect of Muslim. They weren't kind of monastics like you have in sort of the Catholic tradition, where they're really kind of this separate part of society and kind of have a unique function. They were so in the world and kind of the society. So much of how Islam spread, contrary to the popular belief, was through these poets and these mystics and introducing these spiritual techniques and practices and communities to peoples that had been conquered by the early Islamic sort of expansion. So part of being pious Muslims is they're likewise very much following the kind of basics of Islamic practice, which involves daily prayer, almsgiving, fasting, these things you might associate with Islam, such as the Ramadan monthly fast. And likewise, there's deep ethical traditions in this world religion, and so being kind of compliant with these ethical prescriptions and thinking about them deeply. And basically what that amounts to in short is following the Sharia, the sacred law within the Islamic tradition, which is incredibly complex and varied and has a very scholastic element to it, and is really kind of nothing like what people have been kind of conditioned to be afraid of as Westerners in our post 9/11 era. And so this brings in this element of deeply engaged with the world, being in the world but not of it in a certain way, and a kind of mysticism that is at its best, at least, as concerned with serving others as attaining some kind of state or experience. So if you're familiar with Buddhism, there's in the Mahayana tradition, the idea of the bodhisattva, the kind of saint who continues to forego their own enlightenment and eventual nirvana to continue to come back and be reincarnated in the world to hopefully save all the sentient beings. And I think that's definitely an ideal in kind of Sufi spirituality as well. It's not just about kind of one's own attainment and being able to figure out how that spirituality actually translates to worldly action in very concrete and personal ways is deeply important, I'd say.
Have you seen any speculation or good discourse around psychedelic or psychoactive use in Sufi or assorted Islamic practice?
Yeah, this is really just kind of starting some of these discourses, and so I've been involved a little bit in thinking through some of these questions, and it's really interesting watching how some of these things play out. So I'm guessing most would be familiar with the notion that alcohol is a sort of forbidden substance for Muslims, according to mainstream understanding. And the reasoning behind that is this is an intoxicant. And so an intoxicant has this kind of harmful effect, both personally and socially, perhaps. And thus, keeping it kind of tucked away is perhaps the better way to go about things on a social level. Well, do we want to consider psychedelics intoxicants? That's a little more of a nuanced discussion that really requires input from both folks who are kind of involved in this medical and pharmacological research of, what's it actually doing to the brain and the body, and is this health promoting? Is this causing some deleterious effects? In what context, at what doses, etc. But also, for folks with firsthand experiences who can speak to the qualities of subjective experience that are brought about by ingesting these substances. And are those intoxicating states? Maybe not. Maybe they're very lucid in certain respects. And so this is exactly the kind of Islamic legal question that requires a significant interdisciplinary deliberation, basically. And so a lot of sort of the early discourse I've seen is pretty open, pretty positive in terms of, of course, Muslims are allowed to take medicines that have kind of positive health effects, even if there's some kind of dangers or intoxicating impacts. So most of the Muslims I've talked to, especially the people a little more involved in the intellectual tradition and the Sufi spirituality, will say, yep, psychedelic therapy, that's a thumbs up so far as kind of I understand Islamic legal thinking here. But what I was talking about a little bit earlier of, okay, these spiritual experiences themselves might be implicated in kind of the health promoting impacts of these substances. That puts a little bit of a thorn in just kind of an easy split of, this is a medical thing, and so we're going to allow it on a medical basis. But we're not going to think about this in kind of a spiritual sense, which is a little bit unfortunate because I think the Islamic tradition has some uniquely helpful resources to be able to parse psychedelic experiences and go through that existential process of integration and meaning making in a middle path that kind of avoids the reductionism of, that was kind of just a mental experience I had, very maybe idiosyncratic to me, and ultimately was just neuron activity that was atypical. It's hard to get the juice out of the lemons with that perspective. But there's so much, and we've seen this more and more as the psychedelic renaissance has gained notoriety. These issues of psychedelic narcissism and spiritual emergency of tipping into these grandiose or paranoid types of states on the other side of deeply intense visionary experiences that it's so easy to just be swept away in the intensity of those and think that kind of the initial interpretation of whatever this was is the reality of these things. So I guess what I'm most excited about to be involved with and hopefully see more work done in the kind of Islamic context is this kind of more spiritual interpretation of these experiences, and not just kind of keeping it locked away as it's okay as a medical thing, but really how do we think about these kinds of drug-induced visionary experiences from kind of Islamic philosophical and theological perspectives? Because I think there's a lot of richness there. And this is something that can cut both ways. I think there's a lot of material within the Islamic tradition that can be appropriated in a very positive sense to give people better tools for parsing these experiences. But likewise, I think these types of psychedelic experiences can provide an opportunity for Muslims to think in kind of novel and critical ways about metaphysical, spiritual questions, and come in contact with both their own experience in these regards and kind of what their tradition is able to speak to with that, and continuing the really vital and lively aspects of Islamic speculative thought.
So I remember reading Carl Hart, and Carl Hart had these really interesting arguments around a lot of what we in the psychedelic scene see as, the religious or mystical experience, often becoming available in a lot of Middle Eastern thought through opium
Mm-hmm.
and hashish. And have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of the Islamic world, there was, of course, substance use historically. It wasn't as prominent in certain as in certain other cultures, certainly compared to some of these indigenous traditions that have been particularly engaged in the psychedelic renaissance for their historic psychedelic practices. I'm sure there's certain Sufi traditions that have used hashish to produce altered states in kind of ritual experiences. It's not that prevalent, perhaps more so historically, but especially with some of the transformations the Islamic tradition has gone through in modernity that led to a little bit more of a conservative and kind of puritanical approach on the whole. You see some of that stuff get a little more put under wraps. But certainly coffee. I mean, coffee came out of Ethiopia through the Islamic world, through Sufi practitioners who were using this substance as an aid to late night prayer and chanting practices to sort of get in this state of union and communion with the divine and with the kind of interpersonally as well. So a very ubiquitous substance, and a little less sexy than ayahuasca in terms of the experiential elements. But yeah, so you see things like that. There's some work that's been done about historic drug use in Islamic societies. And there's even certain lesser known Sufi traditions like the Bektashi Sufi order that has a heavy presence in Bosnia and that kind of former Yugoslavia part of Eastern Europe, and ritual wine drinking is very much a part of that community and their spirituality. So the situation is a little more complex than would first kind of meet the eye to an outside observer who all they know is, oh, Islam is this religion that forbids alcohol and maybe other intoxicants. But in general, it's pretty rare to see Muslims promoting substance use, even in these kind of spiritual contexts. I think there's one particular Shi'i. So there's the two major groups of Islam, the Sunni majority and then the Shi'i minority that is mostly concentrated in Iran and Iraq nowadays. But there's one group in the Shi'i denomination that is this spiritual order that has kind of authorized some psychedelic use in these kind of intentional mystical sort of practices. So very much though in kind of continuity with these previous Sufi mystical traditions. At least that's how they're thinking about this kind of authorization. So
I had a really fun and interesting phone call with Wahid Azal. Are you familiar with Wahid Azal?
Yeah, that's exactly who I'm talking about.
So he and I guess two Lebanese scholars worked that through, and that's a really fascinating project.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to. Wahid and I decided not to do a podcast, but it would be really interesting to do one with the Lebanese scholars if you ever, if that's ever something that we can pull together.
We'd love it.
Cool. So in terms of like, okay, we did a little bit of the Islamic history. Can we kind of pivot to like what is really important and is interesting for the psychedelic set? So I'm thinking psychonauts, I'm thinking researchers, policy people have little creativity and interest in this stuff, but like what is important about philosophy for this, like, strange mainstreaming of psychedelics that's going on right now?
Yeah, so I think especially what the Islamic philosophical and mystical traditions could contribute here is interpretive frameworks for understanding these experiences, both on a kind of broader philosophical level to maybe make sense of the reality of these experiences, and certainly Whitehead and the process philosophy tradition likewise has a lot to contribute there, but also on a more personal level in terms of meaning making, existential integration, these kinds of things. And in particular here, I'm thinking of the deeply complex metaphysics of imagination that developed out of philosophical Sufism. So to get a little bit heady here, you have coming out of the kind of Greek philosophical world way back when, this school of Neoplatonism, so developing after the great philosopher Plato with figures like Plotinus, which presented a vision of the cosmos that had different layers of reality. The kind of concrete material layer was at the bottom of the stack, and at the very top you had this kind of divine reality of the one, and in these intermediary spaces you had sort of angelic existence, and here's where Plato's forms sort of were inhabited, so pure ideas that are from this perspective more real than kind of our material world, but they're also less definite, less concrete, And so there's this kind of flow down from this kind of perfect divine one into these ideas. And as it goes, it gets a little more concrete, but also a little more degraded. And this is kind of how evil happens, etc. So you had these Islamic thinkers who translated all these ancient Greek texts into Arabic as they were seeking to systematize their theology and religious sciences after kind of having this revelation of the Quran descend to Prophet Muhammad. And so they picked up these frameworks from Neoplatonism with this hierarchical cosmology. And not only were they kind of deep interpreters of these Greek philosophers, they appropriated the ideas and kind of gave them an Islamic spin, and then ended up with very kind of unique and creative kind of endogenously Islamic modes of thought. And one of the really interesting ones that comes up is this metaphysics of imagination. So for these Sufi Neoplatonists, you have God at the top, and our material kind of corporeal world at the bottom. And there's more going on than just that. But what's really important here is this intermediary level of the imagination, which is not only a sort of faculty of the human being, just as sort of the intellect that can apprehend like a pure idea, like justice, and in the kind of Platonic sense. So we have this imaginal faculty that can kind of create visionary sort of experiences and interpretations. And likewise, it's not just a sort of thing that exists in our heads, though, but ontologically. So in the actual structure of the reality as these mystical thinkers understand it, there's also kind of an imaginal layer of the cosmology where, as one great Islamic philosopher put it, bodies become spiritualized and spirits become corporealized. And so these are our dream experiences where things are a little fluid, but they have a little bit of symbolic resonance to them, and they captivate us. And they not only descend kind of into our awareness, but we kind of also project out, not in this kind of very psychologized sense of, you're just kind of reading something in a way colored totally subjectively and idiosyncratically, but there's something in you that resonates and somehow kind of produces this coherence between something that's a little symbolically vague without your kind of existential personal involvement there. So a lot of work went into fleshing this out in very robust and nuanced sort of ways that try to tread the path between just being kind of overcome with uncritical acceptance of a visionary state, but also not just dismissing it as that was some wacky stuff, doesn't fit my frame, not gonna go there. So you have these very complex schemes of interpretation, and it's like, wait a second, that might be helpful for people doing some visionary experiences that might be substance induced. And the more and more I've seen some of these issues of spiritual emergency and the like develop in especially people who are kind of getting into psychedelics for the first time and don't have a lot of frameworks or like personal containers in their lives to be able to parse through some of these experiences. I've found this, at least in my own life, certainly deeply helpful to both stay grounded, but then get as much richness and dynamism and beauty out of the experiences that are had. So especially the Sufi mystical thinker Ibn al-Arabi, an Andalusian, so modern day Spain, Sufi poet and philosopher, and all around very important figure in Islamic intellectual tradition, has so much to say about the reality of the imagination as both a faculty and an aspect of the cosmos. And just even dipping one's toes into some of that material, I think, can start to give a little bit more of a, not a roadmap per se, but some heuristics for, okay, what do I do when I encounter this visionary psychedelic experience where I feel like I am self-revealed to myself as the divine being itself, or there was this autonomous entity that seemed to dispense sacred wisdom to me that I can't quite grasp now, but it was existentially poignant. And or I had a kind of nightmare trip of all these horrors that came as this sort of series of archetypes that I encountered, and those are all very overwhelming. It's very easy to either push them down, repress them, and say, I'm not going there, or get totally overwhelmed and taken in by those in a way that isn't productive to living a day-to-day life and accomplishing worldly goals, and just growing in wisdom that can actually be actualized and manifest in concrete relations and ways of interacting. So
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it, and I'm with you that like there's a certain like faculty that comes when we have this exposure to these thoughts and systems where things might not feel as insane. We're like, oh, people have been here before, and like they've actually been struggling with similar things, and it kind of breaks the frame that psychedelics are the only way to experience these things too, which I appreciate endlessly. And spiritual practice can get you pretty far, folks. And I think there's yeah, I've been deep in the throes of some very strange psychedelic experiences, and I'm regularly comforted by my exposure to a lot of these things. And we're like, okay, so what? So what if this is what's happening? And remembering that it's probably going to end. Odds are really high that this thing will end. Even if it's a really strange, prolonged experience, it probably should end. So yeah, there's just so much there, and I'm I'm a big fan of Robert Anton Wilson, who collaborated a lot with Tim Leary. Robert Anton Wilson brought a lot of this psychedelic thought and merged it with some, grade school Sufism. It wasn't super sophisticated there, but he had some really, really bright and interesting things to say. And he was somebody that participated in Sufi practice. Maybe he wasn't Muslim, but he, had a lot there. Have you been exposed to any of his kind of stuff around Islam?
No,
Or
not so
Sufism?
much. Yeah,
Mhm.
I haven't dived in too much, but familiar with the name at least. Mhm.
Yeah, he's a important generalist. He synthesized a lot from a lot of different places, and I think as a result of that, maybe um, serious scholars don't take him very seriously, but just the stuff he synthesized was incredible, from all over the place. So that's kind of where I particularly love his work, and how I got some of my initial kind of exposure, and things like visualizing names of God written on your heart over and over and over again, and or like certain parts of your head, or that kind of stuff is a way to like bond you. And like those are really interesting practices when I kind of hear about some people's psychedelic practices. And I don't know, any thoughts there on those kinds of practices and how they might relate to
Mhm.
psychedelic
Mhm.
experience and practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the kind of major ways that Sufism is conceptualized inside of the Islamic tradition is that, okay, let's say as a human being, you're on the periphery of a circle, on the circumference, and the divine reality that you maybe want to unite with, or have a vision of, or be in deep relationship with, is dead in the center. Okay, so you're going from the circumference to the center. That kind of line movement is the Sufi path. But this circumference itself, to even be somewhere where you have a line to the center, that's kind of the kind of orthodox Islamic practice. This is the Sharia, which is mostly sort of obligatory aspects of worship. It's secondarily things like contract law, dietary law, and these types of things. I mean, what I think people outside of the Islamic tradition can kind of take from this is, container is very important, and a container is probably something that should be really holistic and involve a lot of embodiment and community and repetition, having a cycle, a schedule, being grounded in one's body in basic ways as one does during this ritualized prayer practice. And being intentional about what one eats and consumes, and trying to follow basic kind of ethical living in terms of how one's treating one's neighbors and such. That probably gets you a good way into then starting to ramp up some of the experiential intensity, whether one's doing it with breath work or experiential chanting practices, and or psychedelic substances. So I think there's a lot that could be gleaned on that level, in terms of what a good container looks like in a very holistic way, in terms of set and setting, but deeper than just that. What are the day-to-day practices that are producing your set generally, and what are your communities like, and are those intertwined with this kind of more spiritual aspirant aspect of your life, and how could they be, and is that part of your life touching your sort of more biological aspects? Oh, I gotta eat, I gotta consume other living beings in some way, and how can we knit this together in a more holistic way, so that you have a good grounding to be able to then go off and pursue some typically very destabilizing experiences, and be able to turn that destabilization into ideally something positive that not only gives one's own kind of beautiful and existentially reassuring experiences, ideally, but then is returning and integrated into a context where it can already ripple out through ethical relations and personal inspiration that has the right kinds of outlets to really be realized and actualized.
I'm hearing something in the subtext around consistency, right? Like in consistency in your worldview, how you relate to the world and God and each other, and is there something there? I think like philosophy generally kind of really appreciates consistency. I
Mm-hmm.
guess generally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Consistency, coherence, and rhythm, I would say, are deeply important, and well, that's some of the things that I love about the Islamic tradition on a very personal level. The prayer times, they are dictated by the rotation of the earth, where the sun is in our sky. That is what signals the time for a given prayer during a given time of day, and so you have this very natural rhythm of being in tune with that very basic cycle that it's so easy to just be out of tune with, and just kind of take for granted, and having those times in the day to pause and stop in that more spiritual way. But then likewise, the lunar cycle of the Islamic calendar, not a solar calendar, but the phases of the moon themselves are dictating which month is coming next, and knowing that these rhythms that you're participating in spiritually, it's not just your own kind of personal practice, but it's something that people in your kind of geographical area would be doing at the same time, and then likewise, this rhythm is has this kind of global collective aspect to it that's very beautiful, and has a deep solidarity to it, and so finding the ways to connect communally, but then personally, spiritually, and then to the broader natural world. These are things I find in the Islamic tradition in spades, and why I'm so attached to it. But certainly, there's other modes that these things can take, and if you can check all those types of boxes with kind of the sequence of practices, that's great, and probably will do a lot to create the kind of robust container to hopefully be able to do some visionary stuff in safe and more effective ways.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that. Um, do you see any kind of major misconceptions around how psychedelic thinking these days intersects with Islamic thought?
Yeah, it's just so new. I feel like, yeah,
Hmm.
there's not a ton of Muslims really wading in to the discourse, at least as Muslims, sort of through the perspective of Islamic thought. There's certainly plenty of researchers who I'm sure are personally of kind of Islamic conviction, but kind of have their science separate from their kind of metaphysical and faith commitments as it goes nowadays. But yeah, and likewise on the other side, I mean, I think there's definitely the perception of, oh, Islam is this very strict, puritanical, anti intoxicants kind of tradition, which certainly has an element of truth to it. But the story is actually much more complex. So I think those are, yeah, kind of on both sides, the sorts of dominant conceptions that, yeah, can at least hinder some of the interesting exploration in this intersection that I'd be very interested to see more of. So,
Mm. Yeah, I like that. And can you speak a little bit to this? Now, shit, I want to do a few things here. And this feels like it could take 8 hours, but I kind of want to do, like, we kind of touch process worldview, but you kind of identify as like a metamodernist. Can you give us like a high speed metamodernist explanation?
yeah, sure thing. So we got this is kind of talking about worldviews, or for a more technical term, epistemes. So kind of one's basic framework for understanding things, and can exist, yeah, intellectually, but also in terms of values and kinds of art and media that is being produced, and what kind of aesthetic features it has. So yeah, if you have modernism that is very kind of aspirational, and oh, we can really understand things through science and master the world in certain ways, and oops, we did a lot of colonialism all of a sudden, and we're super racist. Then you get postmodernism that really tries to kind of react against that, and say, oh, there's limits to our knowledge, and oh, a lot of what passes as knowledge is actually power relations, and ooh, maybe we want to value difference and diversity in more intentional ways. And so that's great, as well as yeah, pulling back against these very real overreaches and evils that came from this modernist perspective. But it can also kind of leave a lot open. It's a very critical standpoint of yeah, critiquing the ills, and kind of diversifying, but it's hard to get to a sort of new unity, or a new big picture thinking from the postmodern vantage point. There's a million caveats to all these things, but one of the basic ways of understanding metamodernism is this new framework that kind of comes after that, that starts to be, yeah, sincere on the other side of irony, starts to be, yeah, aspirational and big picture thinking on the other side of criticality, but not just returning to kind of a naive modernist standpoint, but yeah, really having fully integrated, to use one of our major psychedelic terms, these critical and important aspects from the postmodern view. So there's a lot of different kind of trends and lineages under this term nowadays. So I'm sure I will have upset someone with my broad strokes definition there, but I think that's a decent kind of way to start introducing it.
Cool, thank you. And okay, so is there some sort of bridge between process thought and metamodernism?
Yeah, definitely on the philosophical side. So one of the great discourses that the process philosophers and theologians were involved in I think even the 80s, 90s onwards, was what they called constructive postmodernism. And ooh, right away that has a little bit of resonance to how I was just describing the kind of metamodern frame. And basically they were trying to, yeah, distinguish some of this critical post-structuralist French philosophical and European philosophical tradition from the kind of uh, more yeah, constructive and empirical and speculative traditions that came out of especially American philosophy, with thinkers like William James, who might be familiar to folks in the psychedelic scene.
Let's hope so.
For the varieties of religious experience, a very seminal book on looking into these different kinds of mystical states and even drug-induced ones. And likewise, though he wasn't American proper, he came to America, Alfred North Whitehead, the process philosopher. So sketching a different lineage that is postmodern in a different way and in a more constructive way. And that's great because, the metamodern paradigm came out and drew upon totally different sources than the kind of process constructive postmodern discourse. And now we have the chance to bring these things together and synthesize some very very resonant materials. And so excited to see some people do that. I'll hopefully do a little bit of it too. It's a promising time for renewed interest in constructive, speculative, cosmological types of philosophy, for sure.
I love it. And okay, so what are some things you're hoping to see Okay, so I'm putting something on you, but also let me know. Push back, please. So I'm from what I know of you and your thinking around process thought, at least there's critiques around this hardcore materialism and like these limits to science. Like, could you speak a little bit around limits to science that might be helpful for psychedelic scientists and clinicians to understand?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's see what I can do here. They're certainly deeply complex, and these are issues you got to be careful with. I mean, our modern science has produced, medical marvels, to be sure. It's also, on the flip side, absolutely decimated our natural environment and could lead to multi-species collapse, worryingly imminently. But nonetheless, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and end up with some kind of reactive paradigm that no longer allows for effective science to happen that can do things like figure out cures for disease and the like. But one of the issues with the kind of way that science has been pursued in the modern paradigm is it totally removes the human subject as an experiencing subject with values and tries to neatly cleave a fact value kind of distinction and act as though scientific knowledge is this purely objective, disinterested mode of knowledge and investigation. And I think more and more we're seeing that's not true. There is kind of a value aspect inherent to some, say, energy production technology that, it makes some great power, but turns out it destroyed the health of this ecosystem that was actually truly essential to being able to live sustainably in such and such bioregion. So not thinking about the context and also the way that experience itself is the basis through which all scientific measurement happens, through all the data analysis. It happens through human agents that are invested in the truth of the matter, invested in the success of some experiment for really valid reasons, but also sometimes for very questionable reasons. And so, being able to bring experience and value back into at least the conversation of scientific investigation and bring that criticality there for sure. So hopefully the scientific endeavors we're pursuing are life affirming and holistic and ecologically sustainable rather than just profit maximizing and have this kind of cop out of, it's just the objective scientific truth. The truth is the truth, but it exists in this web of human and ecological relations that when you extract it from that context can be quite disastrous. So that's one of the kind of helpful lines of thought that I think the process discourses can get us started on. And there's a lot more richness there and nuance than I was able to present just now. But a great kind of introductory text to some of these issues that came out quite recently is The Blind Spot by Evan Thompson and a couple other co-authors. It's a cognitive scientist, and I think astrophysicist, and someone else. So people who are entirely deeply steeped in real hardcore natural sciences and making these types of critiques in very sophisticated and accessible ways, though, too. So
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And like the this point about um science kind of getting us to today, science in this very materialist frame, getting us here, I think can't be understated. Um, and I know some people don't really believe in climate damage or climate change, which is bonkers to me. But at the very least, this is how I used to frame it. So, like, let's not even go there. Let's talk about species loss, forest loss, um, dirty air, dirty water, increased cancer rate, like all of these things. And then we can look at there's this really, I think the author is James Hillman's kind of Jungian
yeah.
thinker. We're 100 years into psychotherapy and the world's still a mess. So, like, these things are really important to take seriously. Like that, perhaps this clinical, dry, materialist frame really did get us here. And what can we do as opposed to throw more on it? And is this medicalization of psychedelics the thing that's going to save us? You know, very partialistically, yes, very, very partialistically, but there needs to be so many other things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you like to think about this?
Yeah. So what I'd say to that is what I think I'm most excited about with the psychedelic renaissance and all the clinical research isn't any of the kind of individual kind of results or treatment paradigms themselves that are coming up, but the totally kind of distinct psychiatric paradigm that is emerging to kind of scaffold even these things, where it's totally different than just the pop a pill to kind of recalibrate your out of whack brain chemistry, where you're treating the human being in that context as just this material biochemical phenomena, isolated as individual, exapted from social, economic context, etc. Uh, in this new psychedelic research, experience itself is coming into play, and we're seeing the substances mostly as tools for someone's kind of self-empowered healing process in all kinds of ways. And that happens best in sort of therapeutic alliance and group settings, and all the emphasis on preparation and integration. Suddenly we're getting a much more holistic perspective on what the human being is in a medical context, though. It is this experiencing, invested subject that and that is what is involved in the healing, not just this kind of biochemical material system, though that is involved too, but that's being brought now into relation with these other social and humanistic and experiential aspects that if we can start making some of these same paradigm shifts in other contexts as well, we have a possibility to get again to a much more holistic and attuned kind of paradigm and procedure for different kinds of sciences, not just in kind of medical context either. And it's great to see the work on ecological intersections with psychedelic healing, so more of that, and hopefully the social and economic elements can be brought in more and more too. And likewise, cool to see medical research that is leveraging indigenous cosmological frameworks to interpret experiences. And let's put those right alongside some of the Islamic speculative frameworks that I've been discussing here. And maybe some of these more contemporary philosophies like the process stuff can likewise be brought into the mix. And that's when I start to get excited. It's like, okay, we have so much richness and variety of intellectual depth, and it's been so siloed. And now we can bring these complex quantitative and qualitative scientific methods right into the mix with these really intentionally thought through metaphysical, cosmological frameworks, and do those things side by side. See what you get with the indigenous perspective, what you get with the Buddhist perspective, and not to find some final answer from any one of these things in particular, but to build a tapestry where there's just so many points of entry to be able to do something valuable, whether that's some kind of scientific research or personal integration, and maybe those things might be related in some way, and just a whole more interesting and complex and interrelated, transdisciplinary kind of approach to these things. That's what I'm banking on.
And like this idea of having some sort of real answer, some grand unified theory, can you like maybe we can kind of wrap on how I don't want to say it's a fool's errand, but it's like
I'll go there.
a fool's errand. Like, can you please?
Yeah. I think a lot of, especially modern philosophy, tracing back to some thinkers like Rene Descartes, was really invested in having some final firm foundation for philosophical thought that could then be the justification for any rationalization that was subsequently took that as its basis. So this is foundationalism in philosophy, and more, I think we've found out that it is not something that bears fruits at complete total certainty. Is maybe not the best sort of project to be invested in. You can get some great stuff that is maybe pretty certain, might be justified. It might produce some worthwhile impacts, and maybe those somewhat humbler sort of metrics for intellectual projects can be what guide us, rather than we finally got the right perfect foundation, perfect framework. Now we can get around to doing the exactly correct science, and maybe it can even be automated with AI. And it's like, no, that stuff's not going to happen. But we can, do all kinds of well thought through, well argued, and well substantiated kinds of projects, and try to link as many of those together, see what they do, see what other ones do, and hopefully with some humbler trial and error and empirical grounding, and hopeful and sort of aspirational speculation. These things can all go together. They don't need to fight. And in fact, when they do go together, I think you can get a lot further than you can with the foundationalist approach. And I think we see this very much in complex systems science and cybernetics, where you can kind of plop right in the middle of a system, see what's going on without fully understanding it, but there might be ways to participate in that complexity as a limited agent that nonetheless can have a positive kind of impact and role within that complexity, rather than as our paradigm has been, we can do all these things to the natural world, and if we just measure it enough, and blah blah blah, then we can do it healthy. And maybe not, but maybe we can come into right relation with the other ecological webs in this biosphere in ways that is grounded in humility. And I think that's something that the psychedelic experiences at their best can bring us back to as well. Some of that humility and realization of complexity and awe at it, reverence for it. That's a good basis then to do some intellectual and spiritual and scientific projects.
Have you been exposed to the book Tripping on Utopia yet, which is kind of like a biography, synthetic biography of like Margaret Mead and Bateson?
I haven't read it. I recognize the title. Yeah, I'm familiar with Bateson and Mead. Yeah,
it's just a delight. just
Yeah.
because they were involved in everything that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily that they're angels, because they're not, but it's just so fascinating. Um, cool. Well, did we get a chance to talk about everything that you wanted to talk about today?
I think so. This was quite wide ranging. So thanks for taking advantage of my oddly idiosyncratic areas of interest and expertise.
Yeah, I love it. And where can people read about what you're working on, and what are you working on beyond,
Mhm.
Center for
Mhm.
Process Studies and things like that?
Yeah, so with my last name Morningstar, there's really only one other of me. He's a lovely teacher and poet in Michigan. But if you Google me, I'm not hard to find, Jared Morningstar. So I got the .com domain. I think he got the .org. You could also check out his poetry collection, American Fries. If my stuff wasn't up your alley, maybe the other Jared Morningstar has something for you. But yeah, right now I got a couple writing projects and in the works, in the vein of process philosophy and Islam and science. But certainly check out the Center for Process Studies. We've got lots of online things all the time and tons of educational and multimedia resources on all sorts of different parts of the internet. And so would love to have more folks from psychedelic communities involved in what we're doing and be able to do something with that. I think we do have something just starting in the works with some psychedelic Christianity kind of stuff. So if you come to our site, sign up for the newsletter. You might be hearing about that soon. Otherwise, we have some conferences coming up next year in Exeter in the UK. We've got a big philosophy of mind and extraordinary experiences type of event that's still being worked out, still in the early days. So I can't announce any particulars there, but that'll be April next year in Exeter. And there's a lot of stuff we're working on there. And likewise, I'm doing stuff at the Psychedelic Medicine Association, so very much on the clinical side of things there. If you're a clinician interested in psychedelic medicine, join our community, and you can brag to your friends about how you're involved in this association that is tuned into this front line of scientific and psychiatric research. And you can also take our course on managing medical risks in patients seeking psilocybin therapy, now updated with information on the Colorado legislation. So we got Oregon and Colorado there. So that's that's some of the stuff I'm up to.
That's extraordinary. I listened to I think the very recent podcast by PMA, and it was really good on risk mitigation, and
Yeah.
at times I was getting grumpy. I was like, it doesn't need to be that bad. And then I was like, oh, he's actually being like really careful and smart about his language here. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some really great stuff. So yeah, definitely check that out, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Jared, thank you so much, and I hope we can do more in the future.
Yeah, likewise. This was a blast.